Imagine sitting at a dinner party, candles flickering, silverware clinking, and a 3,000-year-old mummy chilling in the corner like he's waiting for dessert. No, this isn't a Gothic fever dream. This was actual entertainment in the Victorian era. There was a time when London's upper class thought unwrapping ancient Egyptian corpses at parties was the height of sophistication. These were real human bodies dug out of tombs, shipped across oceans, and presented like party favors, and people thought this was perfectly normal. So how the hell did we get here? Let's go back and unveil the time. By the early 1800s, Europe, especially Britain, was absolutely obsessed with ancient Egypt. They called it Egyptomania, and it wasn't random. In 1798, Napoleon invaded Egypt, and along with his cannons and warships, he brought scientists, artists, and archaeologists. The French started digging up temples and scribbling down hieroglyphs. Then the British showed up, beat Napoleon, and took all the cool stuff, including the Rosetta Stone, which was basically a cheat code to understand ancient Egyptian. Without it, we'd still have no idea what any of those symbols meant. That's when things really kicked off. Soon, the British elite were importing mummies like they were fancy rugs. Museums, universities, and yes, private collectors wanted a piece of ancient Egypt, quite literally. They didn't just keep these mummies in glass cases. No, that would be boring. The real thrill was unwrapping them right there in front of a live audience, like some grotesque Victorian stage show. And if that's not unsettling enough, some Europeans went even further. They actually ate parts of the mummies. Yes, ate them, believing that ground-up mummy powder could cure everything from headaches to internal bleeding. Imagine that, dining with a mummy, then dosing yourself with one. Enter the Mummy Unwrapping Party. Hosted in drawing rooms and lecture halls, these events were like a cross between a TED Talk and a horror movie. A respected gentleman scholar would stand up in front of a crowd, sometimes hundreds of people, armed with a scalpel and an ego the size of the British Empire. He would carefully cut through the mummy's linen bandages, pulling them away one by one. Underneath were bits of dried skin, old smells from the embalming, and small objects like amulets or even jewelry hidden inside the body. People watched closely. Some were shocked, others just curious. Sometimes someone fainted, other times the crowd clapped. To them, this wasn't scary, it was a show. But why exactly would they do this? To us, it sounds completely deranged. But to them, it was science, or at least that's what they told themselves. A mix of curiosity, colonial arrogance, and a twisted belief that ancient remains held healing powers or hidden knowledge. The Victorian era was obsessed with progress. Science was booming. Natural history, anatomy, archaeology, they were all the rage. So if you were rich, curious, and had a flair for the dramatic, buying a corpse from a dodgy dealer and slicing it open in front of your friends wasn't disrespectful. It was contributing to knowledge. Obviously, it was not science. It was grave robbing in a waistcoat, wrapped in manners, served with wine, and passed off as enlightenment. Most of these mummies were stolen, looted from ancient tombs by local diggers, sold off to European collectors, and passed around like morbid souvenirs of a so-called civilized empire. No permission, no dignity, no context. Just, look what I found in the desert. Let's cut it open after dinner. And it wasn't just the parties, mummies were everywhere. And then there was mummy fashion, jewelry with hieroglyphs, scarab-shaped pins, and coffin-style trinket boxes, even underwear with Egyptian patterns. Deads were not just studied, they were worn. Egypt was exotic, mysterious, and fashionable. But it didn't stop at fashion. Tombs turned into trend. Death turned into design. Enter Egyptian revival architecture. When stealing from ancient mummies wasn't enough, so they built tombs at every street corner. In the 19th century, as Egyptomania swept across the West, entire buildings were dressed like sarcophagi. Stone sphinxes guarded doorways. Pyramids rose over cemeteries. Temples were reborn as banks, prisons, and even waterworks. In Britain, the Victorians didn't just want to see Egypt, they wanted to live inside it. In London's Highgate Cemetery, the Egyptian Avenue looks like the opening scene of The Mummy. heavy stone walls, massive carved lintels. France joined in too. At the Fontaine du Palmier in Paris, 4 majestic sphinxes sit around a column, guarding flowing water like they're watching over the Nile. It wasn't just a style, it was a spectacle. Same stupid trend was seen across the American architecture. In 1846, New York City built the Tombs prison in full Egyptian style. Grim, grand, and blocky, it looked more like a cursed temple than a jail. Boston had the Mount Auburn cemetery, where obelisks lined the paths like a suburban valley of the kings. In short, this thick-headed craze infected Europeans and Americans like a plague. They swarmed tombs and cracked open coffins like kids tearing into birthday presents, convinced that looting the dead was some kind of intellectual achievement. Now get back to mummies. You might be wondering, where were these mummies coming from? Mostly from Egypt's Valley of the Kings? Or anywhere a tomb had been discovered and looted? Locals, desperate for money, would sell the bodies to European buyers. Sometimes the mummies weren't even real, just hastily wrapped corpses made to look ancient. But hey, as long as the audience couldn't tell, the show could go on even with fake mummies. There was a really mysterious thing which was happening at that time, which was called as mummy's curse. Someone opens an ancient tomb and then weird things start happening. People get sick, things go wrong. But this whole curse thing didn't really become a big deal until the 1920s, right after King Tut's tomb was discovered. A few members of the team died shortly afterward. By the late 19th century, things started to shift. Archaeology began professionalizing. Real Egyptologists started condemning the parties and looting. Museums became more cautious. There was growing awareness that maybe digging up people's ancestors and slicing them open at brunch isn't cool. But the legacy of corpse tourism lingered. The damage was already done. Thousands of mummies had been destroyed. Tombs were ransacked. Entire burial sites vanished into private collections or were sold off in pieces to the highest bidder.